Just like, oh my God. And even then, the Taliban will be running around with weapons, making sure that the poor average Afghani citizen uh, can't stuff very much of it into his shirt because they're going to be able to
Right.
vacuum cleaners clean it all up.
Right.
It's
That's
not going to
exactly
go
what's
where it's
going to
supposed to
happen. I
go.
mean, well, I don't think that they're going to fly over dropping, paper
No,
currency or
but
whatever.
metaphorically,
But if they
yeah,
could, that's exactly what would happen.
metaphorically, that's exactly what's going to happen. This money will not go to the average Afghani. This will do nothing to solve the health crisis, or the financial crisis. The price of oil has doubled or tripled. Cooking oil, I mean. There's nobody can get jobs. 14 million Afghanis can't get enough to eat, and the Americans are throwing in $300 million, and now this money that we're talking about, 64 million, is on top of that to go along with the United Nations. They want to kick in a couple hundred million. USAID wants to kick in a couple hundred million. The World Health Organization, all these large organizations. Where does most of that money come from in the first place? It all comes from the United States. So they're just throwing American money around like it's, Smarties at a birthday party. And the Taliban are just they're gonna praise Allah, man. They're gonna be out there with a shovel and bags and scooping this stuff up and shooting anybody who tries to pick it up
Right.
that isn't one of them. And
But of
this is
course,
just so brain dead, such a stupid idea.
but of course, we all know, we all know that they're not going to be flying over dropping this money. So,
No, no,
but
no. That's a
but
metaphor.
but you're not wrong. The money invariably doesn't go to the people, the average, Muhammad on the street. The money goes into the pockets of the rulers whoever they happen to be, and in this case, it's the people with the bigger guns or more guns, at least for the moment. So we're going to see how the thing develops in Afghanistan. But I'm trying to figure out. Okay, well, we're not we're not going to we're going to pull out of Afghanistan, and I say we, I mean the Americans
Right.
predominantly, but to a degree Canadians also were involved in pulling terminating programs and pulling people out who were aid workers, etc., and basically leaving the Afghani people to the whims of the Taliban. So in essence, we've done the same thing. But the justification, how many times did we hear a month ago when all of this was at its peak? Things like, oh, we have to stop doing nation building and we can't be the world's police and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so they pull out and then they turn around and basically they're doing exactly the same thing, except that instead of doing it with people and taking that risk, admittedly, they're doing it with money. And the
Well,
funny thing is that by doing it with money, they're actually being less effective than if they were doing it with people on the ground, with boots on the ground. So again, I don't want to, I'm not criticizing the Americans for making the decision ultimately that they made. Whether I agree with it or not, it's their sovereign right to make these decisions, and it's a good question. Why should the Americans be the world's police? I mean, that's not my position. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I think that there are very good reasons why they should continue to play an active role in in the security and stability of the world in distant countries. They're capable of doing it. We're not capable of doing it here in Canada. So thank goodness that there is in the United States, and thank goodness that certainly since World War II they've been willing to play that role internationally. I think it's been a very positive thing. So I'm not against it, but I am saying that it's their right to say, no, we've decided we don't want to do that. Okay, so but if that's your decision, then why don't you just stick with it? But instead, they decide that they're going to replace people with money, and in so doing, they're going to enrich the very people that the money is supposed to be going around in order to help the people overcome the challenges that are being created by the Taliban So the whole thing just it's so illogical. It simply doesn't make sense. And one other
Well,
point I have to say this, Nick. Let's remember, okay, you just asked a question. You said, and where is this money coming from? Well, it's coming from the United States. But let's be even more accurate. This isn't just coming from the United States. This is coming from American taxpayers. I just saw a beautiful clip. I remember seeing this years ago of Margaret Thatcher in a speech she gave to one of the Conservative Party conventions in England very early on in her leadership of the Conservative Party there, and she made a beautiful um, uh, uh, declaration or observation in her speech, which is so obvious. And what she said was, "There's no such thing as government money. There's only taxpayer money."
I thought you were going to say that she said her famous quote about the problem with socialism is sooner or later you run out of other people's money.
Well, that too, and that's clever. That's a clever observation to make.
Yes, it
But
is.
but just the straight, no beating around the bush. I'm not trying to be clever. Here it is. It's obvious, okay? Why people don't think this way, I don't know. But there's no such thing as government money. There's no such thing as public money. There's only taxpayers' money. That's all it is. It's taxpayers' money.
Well, let me add fuel to your furnace. Here's a statement from a press release put out by the Biden administration through their Disaster Assistance Response Team, or DART, which is based outside of Afghanistan. Let's see. The U.S. is the single largest humanitarian donor in Afghanistan, providing nearly $330 million in this year alone. We will continue to help alleviate the suffering of the Afghan people and call on other donors to step up their contribution to help deliver critical assistance directly to the people of Afghanistan. The United States remains firmly committed to continue our robust humanitarian assistance for the people of Afghanistan. We are proud to announce an additional $64 million, that's where that number comes from,
Right.
in assistance. Okay, so you go back to the same old story. That's all wonderful. There's only one little problem. It's like going to Germany in 1943, trying to help the German people by giving them money because there's, now their economy's in a wreck because the Allies have bombed it to bits, and make sure the Germans get it, but the Nazis don't. I
Which,
mean,
of course, is not possible because the only way that you can get the money into the hands of the German people is through their government.
and who's running Afghanistan right now?
Well, the Taliban.
Exactly. So it's exactly the same thing. You cannot go and give money to the populace if the government of the country doesn't want you to. They may make nice and make you think you're giving it to them, but the moment you turn your back, they send in the vacuum cleaners and the vault trucks, and the next thing you know, these people are still starving. 14 million people in Afghanistan are on the verge of starvation. They don't know where the next meal's coming from. And the United States and the rest of the world, I'm not going to leave the rest of the world out of the hook, out of this equation. The rest of the world is just standing there, just pouring money down a black hole, and they're funneling it, and it's ending up in the pockets of the very people who are making it necessary to pour money in there in the first place.
And that is the issue, and it's very well said. That is precisely the issue right there. Is
You
that
got it.
the money ends up funding the people, the government, legitimate or not, that is creating the situation that requires the aid in the first place. And the
And
aid never
that's
makes it to
why.
the people, and the aid never makes it to the people that need it.
And you know
And
what?
this,
This is led by Biden and his team because, let's face it, he's the big boy on the block, and his total lack of understanding, his total lack of grasping of geopolitical situations, and his leadership are as bad as what we have in Canada, and that's saying something.
yeah, but it's yeah, it's a problem. It's not just a problem with the Americans. It's not just a problem in Afghanistan. I think this is a general issue, and a problem with foreign aid. And again, there's a place for foreign aid. I'm certainly not opposed to it. In fact, I'm more than not opposed to it. I'm a very big supporter of providing foreign aid, so long as it's provided in a manner that's going to be beneficial to the people who are the target of that aid, first and foremost, but also that it's got to prove to be beneficial to us as well. Now, that doesn't mean that we give foreign aid to a country and all of a sudden it's trading with us. That's not the kind of beneficial that I'm thinking about. When I think about beneficial, I'm thinking that it's in our interest that there is peace and stability and goodwill around the world. We don't want wars in corners of the world. And if there's something that we can do to help to prevent warfare and instability and suffering in other countries, then I'm all for doing that within our ability to do it without harming ourselves, okay? So there's a place for foreign aid. This is just, this is sophomoric thinking, though.
This isn't even that. This is grade 5. I mean, come on.
And we don't. It's not even, as I say, it's not limited to this particular situation in Afghanistan. It's something that we see over and over and over again. Look at China. We're going to open China up to Canadian investment or Western investment that they're looking for. We're going to pour all kinds of money in. We're going to open the trade doors, the gates wide open. And what's the justification when we know that China is guilty of the most horrific human rights abuses? And it was even when we were talking about doing this. And the argument always was, well, if we're doing business with China and we're interacting with them, and this is an argument I've heard again and again and again with other countries, that the result is going to be that they're going to learn from us and they're going to be exposed to our values, etc. And as a consequence of that, they're going to start to respect more and more human rights. And every time I would hear this, Nick, I would say, no, that's the opposite. Because these countries don't care about the status of their people. They don't care about whether this trade is good or bad. They don't care about the economic condition of their people. But we care here about the condition of ours. So once we've got those trade routes opened up, it's not us that have the leverage over the Chinese or whomever it happens to be. It's they who have the leverage over us, because they don't. If we say, well, we're going to cut off trade, well, they're going to go, well, okay, go ahead. What do we care? And they don't. They don't care. On the other hand, they know that we care. So it's a catch-22 of our own making.
Not only do we care, but it also has become a huge economic benefit to Canada, because now much of our trade, because everybody wants to diversify, which is a good thing in general. The question is, who are you diversifying with? Like India, you could do as well by dealing with India as you can with China, because guess what? The population's pretty much the same thing in India as it is in China, give or take a couple of 100 million. But the point I'm making is that we threw that opportunity away when Mr. Trudeau went over there and made a complete and total ass of himself, and just ticked off the Indians, and they said, what do we want you for? You a bunch of bozos. And that any opportunity in the short term, at least, to build a trade bridge with them was just turned into ashes, all because of some idiot who thought it was clever to try to look and act like an Indian when he clearly wasn't. There could take if we had decent leadership. And this is why I say that this kind of stuff is just what drives me crazy. And when you see Biden doing this, when you see people suffering I won't say needlessly, because